Sure if stream is up yet. We haven't got the green light. It looks like it's working now. So hello coders, welcome to a fine Wednesday. It's 7:37 BST in the UK. It is Wednesday morning, and today we're going to attempt, I say attempt in air quotes because I haven't done this in a while. We're going to attempt to write some SQL, some MySQL, some raw SQL, and we're going to try and get some tables created, or a table at least, in the database container. So I haven't physically written raw SQL in a couple of months, so I'm a little bit rusty. So I'm probably going to need something to as reference on. The table that we're going to focus on is the status table. This is the table that will hold the statuses of the invoicing system that we're building. And for anyone new to the stream, what I'm doing is I'm building a invoicing application using raw PHP and obviously SQL. And what I'm trying to achieve is to build this system that I can use to teach object-oriented programming on a FreeCodeCamp course that I'm going to be doing. Now, I was talking yesterday in the yesterday's stream about the hosting of a project that will promote this and so forth. We're going to be talking about that more later on in this stream, and also I've been playing around with a bit of Gatsby.js as well. I was doing that yesterday. I actually created a website which I will be demonstrating later on too. But let's just work on building this this actual not SQS, sorry, that's a totally different thing, SQL. The reason why I want to do the write raw SQL is that I think it's the easiest thing to do. There is only a couple of tables here. There is the invoicing table, the invoice item table, the status table, and the customer table. Obviously, there could be more tables later on. And usually what I would do is I would let a ORM do something like that, or some sort of other database abstraction layer, a little bit like perhaps Doctrine. So I would create some entities, some mappings, some annotations, and then run a command, and suddenly, by magic, if by magic, my database would be available. We're not going to do that because I've strictly said that we're not going to be using any libraries apart from the libraries that we use for testing, such as Codeception and PHP Unit and so forth. So we're actually going to be writing some SQL, and what I can use is a command line to inject or to run that SQL code, that file, into the browser, into the container, which will update the database and so forth. What I did earlier, if I go to the browser here, what I did earlier is I created some issues. So this is the FreeCodeCamp -PHP-OOP project of my PFWD repo. And I created a couple of issues this morning, about 17 minutes ago, in fact. First of all, create a schema rebuild script. So this is going to be a script that we can just sort of like pipe to or stream to the DB container. This script will be sourcing other SQL scripts to build up the schemas in place. One of the schema scripts is going to be the create MySQL schema for the status table. So if we open that up, it's just, write the SQL for the status table. So what I'm kind of envisaging is that we would have a rebuild script, and that rebuild script would be sourcing other scripts to then rebuild the database, and then I can run that SQL script either whenever I build up the containers, maybe in an actual execute command or an entry point, or I could just run this myself against the containers and everybody's happy. So that's pretty much where my head is at the moment. I don't think I need to go down the route of actually building PHP to do this. This is certainly not going to replace Doctrine whatsoever, not at all. It's not going to replace any other framework at all. No, this is just a framework that I want to use, that I'm building to demonstrate this invoicing application to allow me to teach object-oriented programming. And to be honest, the whole SQL side of this thing isn't actually very relevant in terms of the actual what I'm going to be teaching, because it's not object-oriented programming. This is SQL. So I kind of want to try and do this as quickly as I can, but at the same time as efficiently as possible. And I think the best way to do this is to just write raw SQL rather than have my own mapping layer and all of that jazz. So this is what we're going to do. Okay, let's excuse me. Gosh. I beg your pardon. Let's take a look at some of the code. Let's go back into the coding view. And also what I did is I just removed that customer branch that I was doing yesterday. I just wanted to tidy up things. Let's bring that down a little bit, and let's open this up a little bit further. Okay, so what I'm kind of thinking is that we would, in the MySQL folder here, we would have a schema.sql file, which I think is empty. I want to rename this to be rebuild, so we're going to just do that. I tell you what, before I've gone and leaped ahead again, before I do any of this, let's go and create our branch before we do that. Otherwise, I'll be hacking about with the master branch, and that's never good. So let's just quickly do that. Beg your pardon. Let's just go back to the browser. I want to just see what the issue number is. It is, first thing we're going to do is, yeah, we'll do that one there, which is the status table. What is the issue number? Where can I find that? 15. Issue number is 15. Okay, no problem. Let's go back to the code. Beg your pardon, I should not have done that. That was that would have that would have ruined things straight from the off. Right. Okay, I'm just bringing up the hub for reference. What do I want to do? I want to build a new feature branch. So, okay, let's do git checkout -b, because we want to create the branch. This is going to be 15 hyphen status SQL. Let's just type that in. That's fine. Okay, so we've created that SQL. So I'm going to worry about the rebuild script at the end rather than at the start, because that I need something to rebuild rather than just to run a script. So I'm going to create a new folder in here. I'm going to call this or am I going to create a new folder? Let me think. Yeah. Let's just create a new file. In fact, we can hack all this up later. I want to create a new SQL file, and of course I don't have that as a template yet, which is annoying, but we can do status. So I'm just creating my file.sql. There we go. Status.sql, that is the file. And we won't worry about these warnings coming up. Can I close these because they're going to be problematic? No, I can't take those off. Not in this view. Wonderful. Okay, you'll just have to bear with me. Sorry. Okay, so this is where we're going to actually write the SQL, and then I'm going to see if I can stream this SQL into the database container. Let's have a quick look on the old Googles to see if I can find any kind of reference for creating a table. I kind of know off the top of my head, but I like to have something that I can read and just glance at. So I'm going to just type in MySQL create table. Okay, creating table by example. That's cool. That's groovy. I was thinking about doing this on the command line, but maybe not. I don't know. That's a good example. We'll follow along with that. Okay, cool. Groovy. And also, I need to have a create if not exists, because we want to make sure that we can skip over the creation of the table if it already exists. Yeah. So first of all, we want to do a drop, then we want to do an if not exists type jazz, I think. Oh, why does MySQL just want you to click on various things on the website? So let's have a look. Create if not exists. Sorry about this. Bear with me just a second. Okay. Okay. That's groovy. Let's go to the code now. Sorry about that. I was just having a little peruse. So we're going to write this SQL. I'm a little bit nervous because I haven't done this in a while. And this will probably go horribly wrong. But we want to do a create. And, ooh, excellent. PHP Storm knows what I'm doing. That's excellent. I love that. So we want to create a table. Excellent. And we want to do it if that table does not exist. And the table that we want to create is a status table. Now, I think it's probably better to prefix these with a prefix because or shall I? That might make it a little bit more complicated. Yeah, okay. Let's worry about the prefixes later if I need to. I'm just thinking about keywords and reserved words. So then we come into our nice little fancy. Let's bring that out to make a little bit of room. Fancy little thing here. We got create table if not exists. So that's the start of it. Now we actually have to define the parts of the table, the fields of the table that we want to build. So I guess what I should do really is I should go over to here. I should take a look at what's in the entity of the status. And I should say, why am I doing status first? Let's just clarify that first of all. If you think of the tables in the database, you can see them here. We've got customer, we've got invoice, we've got invoice item, and we've got status. What is the most difficult table there is? The most difficult table is the invoice, because the invoice connects to the customer, the status, and it has many invoice items. Usually what I would do, if this was a client project that I have, what I would do is I would draw up what's called an ERD. Well, first of all, actually, what I would do is I would request for all of the fields, and then I would, if this was a new project, I would then take the fields to maybe third or fourth normalized form, right? So this is where you can actually design the database, design the tables, so you're not doing any kind of repetition. You've understood the associations between the tables and so forth. Then I would create an ERD off the back of that. So we would have an ERD. It's an entity relationship diagram, right? So this is the diagram that demonstrates the relationships between the entities. And those relationships could be perhaps a many-to-many. They could be a many-to-one, a one-to-one, a one-to-many, and so forth. They could even be what's called a pig's ear. So that's where you're linking to the same table. It could be, for example, if you had a categories table and you had a parent category, so you had a parent ID, so it would be linking back to the same table. All of those things would be in the diagram for you. And what I try and do when I start to work on these things is I go, right, what are the outside leaves of this diagram? What are the things that don't necessarily relate much heavily to anything else because it's like a chicken and egg scenario. You can't really build the invoice table until you've actually built all the other tables that associate to that invoice table. So, for example, I will be writing SQL that would, if I was to build the invoicing table, that would have foreign keys that would link off to the invoicing item, the status, and the customer. Well, those tables haven't been created yet, and so I can't actually create those. However, the status won't have that because the status isn't associated to those things in that kind of way. The invoice is associated to the status, right? So you would have the status ID in the invoice, but you won't have anything in the status, right? So the status itself is a separate entity that is connected by or mapped to the invoice through the relationship on the invoicing table, not on the status table. So that is itself, you can see that as a sort of an isolated thing that you can build, and it's not going to interfere with anything else. There's no prerequisites on the status table yet. Also, this is what's called referential data, right? So this is data that is reference data to the system. So let's say, for example, we build this, and this is actually a customer application that I'm building for a client. On the off, when I first build it, it's going to have zero data at all in terms of the actual invoices. There's going to be no invoices, there's going to be no invoice items, and there won't be any customers. However, there will be statuses, because in order to create an invoice, you must have a status. So the status will have referential data for things like the statuses of draft, pending, approved, sent, seen, viewed, all of those statuses that relate to an invoice. The actual data that the customer, my client, would be putting in if they were to buy this application, if this was a real world application, would be the invoicing. They would actually be typing in the invoice items, the customer names, all of those kind of things that I, as a developer, wouldn't do, because they are the features that I would give off to the client. This is why I'm doing the status table first. Basically, I'm trying, if you think of a jigsaw puzzle, you try and look for all the edge pieces first. The edge pieces being the status, then it would be the customer. Once those two things are done, you can then start building the invoice item and the invoice together, because they are the things that really relate to each other. Okay, let's now just continue on with the status PHP. So we need, what do? We've got name and we've got internal name. They are the fields for this, but we're also extending the abstract entity. Let's open that up. We have the ID, date created, date updated, and so on and so forth. If today I can just get away with writing these two and the ID, then I'll be happy, and I can focus on the date stuff later. But let's just continue on down this path, this journey, and create the status.sqs or I don't know why I keep calling it SQS. It's because I'm dealing with SQS in the real world when I'm actually working for clients that use AWS. It's SQL, not not AWS SQS. So create table if not exists status. First of all we need to create a primary key. So we're going to, well, first of all, let's define the actual parameters or properties. So we have ID. We also have we had the name. Whoops, I've already done that wrong. The name. We also have the internal name, and we also have. Whoops, if I can do that right. So we have name, ID, internal name. Okay, let's just focus on those three for the most part. Okay, so the ID is the primary key. It needs to be auto-incremented. The internal name and the name itself are strings. So let's play around with that. First, we'll do the primary key last, because that's a little bit of a special case. So the name is going to be a varchar. This is going to be a varchar of 255, 250, I think. and it's going to be not null because you need to have you need to have it, right? You need to have a status. We're not going to give a default because we need to have the name. Oops. So that's going to be the same for the internal name too. Whoopsie. Okay. So now we've got the ID. Now the ID is slightly different because this is a primary key. It also has extra bits and pieces to it because it auto increments itself. This is going to be an integer, so it's an int. It's going to be an int of 11. It is also going to be not null, null, LLL. And the extra part of this is the fact that it's going to be an auto increment. Oh, excuse me. I think that looks good. Okay, so then we need to actually define that it is a primary key. So after we've actually dealt with all of these things, we can then do primary, and we put this primary key in as the ID, which is backspace ID, like so. Okay, so that is the basis of the table. I'm also going to okay. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab this, all the code, all the things. Let's just go. Excuse me. I need to do a Docker compose down, I believe, to bring it down. And then just do an up -d to bring it up. Let's go into the actual container. So this is Docker compose. It's exec and then db, and then it is MySQL -u for username. Put in the username of root -p. We get asked for the password, hopefully, which is that. So we are in there, and then we can use. I think I called it invoice _app. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to see if I can just do this. Okay, so create table if not exists status, because then what I can do is, I can test it in the command line. If it works, then that's what I will use as the script. So we run this, and there you go. We've actually created our table. I am super surprised that this actually worked straight away, but let's just check. Show tables. So we have our status table. Let's do describe status. Make sure that everything is hanging together. So we have our ID, our name, our internal name. Awesome. All the good things. They're all defaulting to... when they're not allowing null. That's all good. We have auto increment on the primary key. And I suppose I could also do a show create table. Status, and that hopefully will give us the actual SQL that we use to actually build this, as well as some other things that were added to, including this. So there we go. That is that. I guess what we could do is take a look at those dates, perhaps. Let's go back to the code. I'm going to just put in a drop table. Status. So we're going to drop the table, then we're going to create the table if it doesn't exist. So that's cool, which means that I can refresh it each time. Okay, so we're now going to play around with the dates. Now I need to refresh my memory as to the actual bits and pieces for those, so please bear with me just a second. Whether or not it's going to be a time, it's the field types. I think it's a date time. I think. Date time. Yeah, I'm sure that is correct. Yeah, and you can define it by current default, current, yeah. I knew that there was a way of on dealing with the updates and all of this stuff to enforce that things are being updated and so forth. That is probably something that is pretty super awesome, and I'm going to use. So these are the mechanics of actually updating the updated date field based upon the current timestamp. Marvelous. Okay, this is looking good. Okay, so I just want to refresh my memory and go back to the status.php and have a look at the abstract entity. So we have the ID. We don't have it's the date created. It's the date updated. These are the two fields that we need. Date created, date updated. Okay, that's cool. So let's go back to the SQL, not SQS, SQL. And we'll put these at the at here. Now I could if I really wanted to, if I wanted to be a purist on all this stuff, I would create migrations. All right, I would go, right, well, I've created the table, that's one, and then after that I would alter the table and so forth. But I've got no time for that. So we're not going to bother. Okay, so we're going to do date updated. And we're also going to do date created. Okay. And we need to put in a comma. Okay, so the field type is going to be date time. We're going to give it a default of the current timestamp. If I can spell current timestamp, that would be amazing. Okay, so that's our date. Actually, no, that's wrong. Sorry, beg your pardon. That's not right, is it? That should be date created, not date updated. Date created, then date updated. Beg your pardon. Because this uses a different type. Let's just copy this, paste that in here. This should be on update, so not on default, but on update, because this is saying that once when this row exists and it's on update, then there we go, that gets created. So hopefully, excuse me, hopefully that is all good things. Let's run all of this. So I'm just going to grab all of that again. We're going to go into here. We're just going to put in some empty lines just to make a bit of room. We're going to paste that in. No, that didn't even paste. Can I? Control C, Control V. There we go. Okay, so we dropped the table. You can see all of the. I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen. It's not like there's someone in the room with me, but you can drop the table. So that's dropped. And now if I press Enter again, that has now been created, I hope. So let's do those commands again. It is show tables, that's the status. Then it is, come on, describe status. And we have our date created and we have our date updated. Why though is that? Oh yeah, because on default, we are setting the current timestamp on default. And then on default for the updated, it's null because that, you know, it is going to be null when you first create something. And then on the next update, you can see on update create current timestamp, or on update current timestamp. So that should be magic. This should fingers crossed mean that we won't have to faff about too much with the actual dates because MySQL should be able to deal with that. That's pretty awesome. I'm really happy with this. This is going quite well. I was thinking that this was just going to fall flop on its face. Right. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm going to test this out a little bit further. What I want to do is I want to insert some records this time. Excuse me. Okay, so we're going to do an insert into, and the table is called status. Status, if I can spell status, that'd be great. Then what I need to do is define the columns that I wish to insert. We're not going to worry about the ID because that will auto increment. We're not going to worry about the dates, the date created or date updates because they'll be handled. So the only two things that we need to worry about is the name, and we need to worry about the internal name. Okay, then we can give it some values. And I like doing this with my inserts because then you can do more than one. Okay, so the first thing we need to put in is the values, and they're going to be but I don't know. Let me think. I'm not committing anything to concrete yet. I'm just, these are just example statuses of an invoice. So this could be a draft status. So the name would be draft. The internal name would be draft. I think I set this to be all uppercase. Draft. Draft. Yeah, just draft. That's good. Second one we're going to have as sent. Again, uppercase. And we're also going to have another one. We're going to call this one overdue because that's a very important one. Well, actually, let's do sent. Let's do, yeah, okay. Overdue. So draft, then sent, then overdue. I guess they're the three main jobbies, I guess, of an invoice. Okay, so first of all, we're going to drop this the table. Then we're going to create it if it doesn't exist, which, it won't exist because we've dropped it. Then we're going to insert some bits and pieces. So we're going to copy this again. Go into the code here. Let's make a little bit of room. Paste all of this stuff in. That it's not pasting. Of course it's not. I don't know why. Now paste. Come on. You did it for me earlier. Control C. Control V. Why? Hang on. What's going on here? Copy. Right click, paste. Okay, that's frustrating. My whole command, my whole copy and paste thing is stopped. There we go. We got there in the end. Oh, sorry about that. Right, so we're now inserting these three. We can see that we have. If I tell you what, let's scroll up a bit. Let's go all the way up to the top. So first of all, we drop the table. Fine. Then we create the table if it doesn't exist. So that's created. Fine. And then we insert these three records into the table like so. So I should be able to do now a select all from status. And we should have those three in there, which we do. And of course, the date creation has been updated on the current on the current timestamp because that's what we've set up here. So it defaults to the current timestamp. Whereas with the date updated, because we haven't actually updated this yet, this is all null. Of course, when I do go and update this, it will automatically update the date updated field, which is super awesome. Okay, so that kind of concludes that part, which is pretty cool. I think what I'm going to do, though, just for ease of use, is I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a new folder in here. So we're just going to do new directory. We're going to call this data. And the data is going to have data for each one of these things. So we're going to have status .sql. Whoops, and we're going to add that because what I want to do is I want to just split these out a little bit. So because that's the insertion of data. I want to split the insertion of data and the creation of the tables into their own little files. So we have the status here, so that's cool. And we're going to just we'll just remove this schema. I think we're going to create a new folder as well. We're going to call this rebuild, or no. We're going to call this scripts, and we're going to call this one rebuild. New file. We're going to call this rebuild.sql. And what I would like to do is in this, I would like to source, if I can. I'm not sure if this will do this okay, but we will have a look. I want to source let's change that to schema rather than SQL. SQL. Sorry, everything's popping up on my screen. Stop it. Stop popping up. Right click. Refactor, rename. Change that to schema. Excellent. Right, so with the scripts in the rebuild script, I want to go to schema, and then I want to run the status.sql. We're going to put some comments in here. So this is build the tables, and then we're going to, under this, we're going to insert records, or data, I should say, because it is data. And then we're going to source that to the data, and that is status. Okay, so the idea really is that I can pass in the rebuild.sql as a, or I could I could stream this, pipe this into the, not pipe, it's a stream redirection. So it's I'll stream this into the database container. This SQL will go, right, okay, let's source all of the status, or all of the schemas first. So in schema we have the status.sql. So that will create that, right? And we could have multiple schemas. I'm thinking of a schema per table. In the order in which they're in. I might actually put in a number just to make sure the orders are correct. And then after that, all of those schemas are done. In fact, I could just do source, or I could do this in a loop, whatever. After that is done, I will then go through and do the insertion of these things. This gives me a little bit more control as to, when things are built, when things aren't built, and so forth. That is the plan. That is the plan. Let's see if this works, because I'm not sure if I can source these things like this. So let's well, we're in here. We can do we could do we could come into this container as bash rather than MySQL. We could do bash, and then we could do an ls, and all of this stuff is actually not going to be in this container, is it? No, it's not. I might have to mount this MySQL folder into the container, because we're not going to be aware of, or the container isn't going to be aware of these files. That's probably what I should do. Yeah. So in here, what I need to do in the Docker Compose file, in here, we should mount the volume. Whoops. And the volume is going to be dot MySQL, and that's going to go into whereabouts. We could do it. We could just mount it into scripts, couldn't we? Something like that, perhaps. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's tear down the container and bring it back up again. So let's do a down. if I can do a reverse search, down, and then bring it back up again, do it up, -D. And then if I did a bash, go into there as bash, we should hopefully see that we have our scripts somewhere. Can I see them? Yes, they're here. So if we did an ls of scripts, we should have the data, the schema, and the actual scripts itself. That's going to be confusing, isn't it? We have scripts and then scripts. Okay. Okay, first of all, let's see if we can actually get into MySQL. So do u and then root from bash. I'm sure I can, but let's just double check. P and then put in the password. Yes, I can. Awesome. One thing I need to do, obviously, in the scripts themselves is I need to, because every time I go into the database, I need to use the database. I'll show you. If I go into the database now, I can't do a command against SQL until I actually use the against the database until I actually use the database. So if I did show tables, for example, that will throw an error because there's no database selected. I must do use invoice app before that actually does that. So that I need to have that use statement in there. So that's what we're going to do. We go into the scripts themselves on rebuild, and I'm just going to type use, and it is invoice app, and I should put these in backticks. Okay. Will this work? Probably it won't. Let's just make sure that we can actually cat that and make sure that that has changed. That change is reflected in here. So we do scripts, and I think scripts again, and then it's rebuild. Yep. So we got the use and all of this stuff. So I could essentially do this. Let's do MySQL -u root -p, and we are piping in the scripts, aren't we? So scripts and then scripts rebuild. Enter the password. And yeah, we have this error, failed to open file. I thought that was the case. So it attempted to open the file, which is good. So that works fine. But why is it failing? Is the path wrong? So we have schema. This is where things go a little bit awry. I think perhaps what I need to do is I need to hard code this, because what we're doing here is it's actually yeah. Let's see if I can do not hard code this. That's the wrong thing. But I think I need to do scripts. Now this is only going to work from the container. Let's just make sure that that has worked. Let's just do a quick cat of all of that. Those have changed. That's all good. Let's run this again and see if those worked. So let's do a test. No. No, it didn't. Do I need to stop doing that, perhaps? No. I'm sure I've done this before. It could be a permissions thing, of course. I could, of course, just put this all in one file and not be this nitpicky. Scripts, schema, status.sql. I just like separating the data and the actual schema. It's nicer, I think. when that happens, because then you can rearrange the order in which these are sourcing. I just want to do a quick check on the old Googles to just see if there's anything I can find that's going to help me with this. So MySQL source SQL file. So I'm doing the right thing to actually push it in. That's fine. I'm sure there was a way of typing source, and I mean, if I did, for instance, if I did MySQL and went in there, and actually went in there and actually typed source and went scripts. Oh, I know why. I think. Let me just exit out of that. I think I do, because this is now scripts, and then, oh, this is so confusing. So let's go into CD scripts. There is a scripts folder, sure, that we're in. Okay. Let me make this a little bit easier. Let's take out the scripts folder, because that's going to get confusing. Put this in just MySQL here, in rebuild. Let's just remove that from this, and let's just hack this up. So this is that is now how it should be, I guess. So let's exit this, or not exit this. Let's put those in. Scripts. No such file or directory. That is because I've changed that. It's going to be here. And we still have that error. Damn. Darn it. Okay. Failed to open file. Well, I guess what we could do is we could just copy that and cat that out and see if there is anything in there, which it is. So we know that is in there. So we know that the file exists, but failed to is open file. That was the error I had. Failed to open file. In short, you got the path wrong. Did I get any kind of error whatsoever? Error 2. So this is complaining that the file path is wrong. Try providing the absolute path, as it's not clear what the current working directory will be. So I'm guessing what I could do is in the actual, let's do, I'm guessing what I could do is I could go straight into here, and then I could just source that. Let's see, let's do source, and it's scripts, and it is rebuild.sql. Okay, so then let's do script. For a start, I've called that wrong. That needs to be, that's wrong, isn't it? That needs to be an S on the end of that. Although that still doesn't work. Do data, and then, schema, and then it is status.sql. So that worked. That's interesting. And if I did schema and then data, that worked too. So what is wrong? Perhaps I don't even need to do this. perhaps I don't need to have these as strings, although I thought I did. Let's come out of this, run that again. There we go. There we go. Okay, just to test. So the problem I had I had was I actually put these in quotes, which I thought was a good thing, but obviously not. So let's play around a minute. Let's do a MySQL -u root -p just to test that that we're in here. Let's use the invoice underscore app. Let's show the tables, and let's drop the table status. Bye-bye. Show the tables again. We shouldn't have anything there. Excellent. Let's now exit MySQL. Let's now run this command. Unknown table invoice status on schema status.sql. Huh. Okay. Of course. That's because we're dropping the table, and we can't drop a table that doesn't exist. So I wonder if I could do if not exists. I don't know if I can do that, but we'll have a look. Whoops, save that. Now let's run this again. No, we can't. You have an error in your, which corresponds to not exists. Of course not. Okay. That's annoying. Ugh. I'm just having a look at the drop database if exists, drop table if exists, drop view if exists. So drop table, have I not? Yeah, drop table. Drop table if not exists, and then the table name. So apparently that works. Maybe my syntax is wrong. Drop table if exists, and then the table name. Drop table if... Oh, sorry. Drop table if exists. Crazy. That would do it, hopefully. Test. There we go. Right, okay. Just to be sure, 100% doubly sure, we're going to do test. And I put in the wrong password, test. Here we go. We're going to use invoice app, and we're going to do show tables. Now we're going to do drop table status. Bye-bye. Show tables again. Completely empty. Let's now exit that. Let's now run this file. Okay, let's now jump into MySQL. Let's now use the invoice app. Let's show the tables. Let's select all from status. And there you go. Boom. Okay, so that's pretty awesome. We now have the ability to create these SQL files and run them. I'm running them directly in the container. What we really want to do is run them outside of the container. So what I want to do is I want to do a drop table status again. Goodbye. Let's exit this out. Bye-bye. Let's exit the container completely. Bye-bye. Let's do a docker ps-a to make sure that they're still up and running. They are. Cool. What I want to do is I want to do a docker compose against exec against the DB container. That's the database container. and I want to do a MySQL -u root -p, and I want to redirect the stream to be now can I do this? I'm just thinking maybe I can't do this. Scripts rebuild.sql. Let's try it. No. I guess what I need to do. Yeah. Okay. I need to think about this, because obviously this is looking on my host machine now, rather than on here. So what I need to do, rather than on the DB container. So I guess what I need to do is I need to have a command within the database container that can run this, and then I can run that through and not stream this in. Or I change the path of these to still be running off the host machine, because we now know that we can source all these things. That means that we wouldn't have to put them as Docker volumes, as bind mounts. Yeah, we could do that. We could try and do that. So that would require me to hack about with this again. So I would have to do this, because it would have to be a relative path, because it's relative to that. So it would be like that. And then this would be something like MySQL and then rebuild. Something like that. But the input device is not a TTY. Yeah. Or, I'll tell you what, I could cat it. I could try and do that. But I'm starting to think that actually these should be within the container. Anyway, so yeah. So we'll fathom out how to actually do this. I'm thinking maybe I need to have an actual command that I can create, a bin command perhaps, that I can run in the database that will do all this. I'm not sure whether I want to do this from outside of the container or not. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, let me think. I don't know. I need to think on that one, I think. Yeah, but it's working. We have the ability of creating these tables and building the data. It's just a question of, do I influence the database outside of the container, or should I go into the container and run that command? Part of me is saying that I should, because it is part of that database, we should go into that container and run that command. That's part of me is saying that. Part of me is also saying that is a barrier of entry, and that it would be nice to just run a command that executes and processes this stuff. Yeah, I'm in two minds. It depends on. I guess we're going to continually be adding all of this stuff. So we've got the customer, we've got the invoice, and then you've got the invoice item. So there's going to be at least another 2 or 3 schemas and datas. Oh, well, at least schemas, at least. And there might be times where I've come across where I need to actually alter the table. So I need to run the whole thing again and rebuild stuff. There's also the need for backing the table up as well, but we can do that through various cats and restores and stuff, so that's fine. But yeah, this is almost like opening a bit of a can of worms as to how to actually address this. Does one influence the schema from outside of the container, or does one need to go into the container to actually do that? All of that interesting jazz. But anyway, that's I'm happy with the way it's all going. Yeah, right. let me take that offline, and I'll think about that, and then I'll get back to you tomorrow. I want to talk before I shoot off quickly about Gatsby.js, because this is something that I've been playing with, and Gatsby.js is awesome. It is awesome. That was what I was looking at. I have created my a very simple website that replaces my peterfisher.me.uk site with just a landing page about who I am, and I'll send this out to people, clients and so forth. This has links to the CV, Websomatic, my company, and How to Code Well, and the ability to send me some info or contact me and stuff. This is done in Gatsby. Gatsby.js is fantastic. I was hacking about with this last night, and this is what I created. And it's a very... the learning curve is quite steep, I think, because I found myself having to relearn a lot of things with CSS, JavaScript, and HTML, because you do it in a React kind of manner. And React is relatively new to me. I've played with it before, but the stuff I was playing with last night was actually quite. I thought was actually quite complicated, but once I got into the swing of things, it was nice. It was easy, and it's super quick. Like, you don't have to refresh the page because it manipulates the DOM. It works. As you could actually be having one window with the browser, not actually touch the browser at all, not actually press refresh, and another window for your code, and it will be basically updating in a live kind of manner, which is so cool. So I want to play around with Gatsby a little bit more. I think it's fantastic. I've been using Sculpin. That's a PHP thing. Just bear with me a mo. I'm seeing that we have I have a message from YetiMan01 asking about, it's saying it's a sub-only chat. I didn't realize it was. Sorry, I didn't see that. I will change the setting. I didn't even know it was, so I do apologize. Change the setting. So yeah, I do apologize, YetiMan01. I didn't realize it was only a sub-only chat, so sorry. I will change that in time for the next stream, so I do apologize. So this site is basically like a landing page that I will just give out to clients and stuff, potential clients and all that jazz. It's got links to other bits and pieces. But the reason why I'm playing with Gatsby and the reason why I'm playing with Sculpin, the How to Code Well podcast is built in Sculpin. The reason why I want to play with those things is because this invoicing application that I'm developing is an application that I'm going to be using to teach object-oriented programming in PHP for FreeCodeCamp, and we're on like the 20th live stream that is covering the actual build of this application. So it's not actually me teaching, it's just me building this application out. And what I would like to do is build a website for that. So what I'm thinking is a single page application, an SPA, where the main sort of there's a video at the top, main video bit, which will be the video of the FreeCodeCamp course once it's done, because that will be a single video, which is like over an hour and a half probably. And then what I'm thinking is underneath a grid where we would have many videos that are the videos of me doing this build of, you know, the live streams at the moment. So if you're watching this when I do that, then hello. And then you would click on that, and then the main video would change to the thumbnail or the video that you've clicked to, right? So it'll be a single page application, that kind of thing. And I think Gatsby is fantastic for that. I think that's really, really useful. I also like the fact that we can hook up Gatsby and other things using GraphQL. I think that it is a wonderful mechanism, going to be very, very useful. Now, that site that I'm talking about, that site that promotes this this course that I'm building, that will be hosted on Hostinger. Hostinger is a sponsor of the live coding streams here, and they have a wonderful offer on at the moment, which is 82% off. If you go to hostinger.com/Peter Fisher, that's all one word, Peter Fisher, you get 82% off plus a free domain. I will be demonstrating the pushing that up to Hostinger, pushing the promotional site up. So that will be a single video that I'll put on YouTube. And Hostinger, I've used them before. They're really good. They are very reliable, extremely affordable, and, you know, 82% off, and you get a free domain. If you've got any kind of like little project that you want to, you know, what you just want something to use to host that, then go for it. Also, they do very good cloud-based things as well. So, you know, if your project needs to scale, then they can help you with that. So do check them out if you've got a project that you want to build. It's hostinger.com/Peter Fisher, all one word. You get 82% off. And also, if you use the discount code Peter Fisher, so if you use that at checkout, then you get a further 15% off, which is really, really awesome. So I think that covers today's stream in terms of writing the SQL. I think if I was to do anything else, then I would probably break it. So I'm going to commit this code up to the GitHub repos. And before I go, I also want to just mention that we have a podcast this Friday. So that's howtocodewell.fm. And that's going to be an interesting conversation with an interesting guest. So you need to check that out if you haven't done so already. That's available on iTunes and Spotify and all of that other good podcasting jazz, or you could watch it directly on the How to Code Well YouTube channel. But for now, happy coding. And I will be seeing you again tomorrow at probably the same time, 0730 BST. I really do apologize to YetiMan01 for having this silly setting on the chat. I didn't realize it was subscription only. Sorry, my bad. That I just hold my head up and hands up and go, yeah, that was my fault. So I'll see you later. And yeah, with that, bye.